Have you ever wondered why so many games get delayed from their original release date? Well, stick around to find out. Hello everyone, my name is Adam and I am an indie game developer, and welcome to TimeLag Gaming. If you are one of my many new subscribers, on this channel I talk about everything Nintendo from the perspective of a game developer, as well as give you behind the scenes videos on what I'm developing. If you're new here and you like what you see, hit subscribe and smash that like button. Nintendo has actually done a really good job at not delaying their first party Switch games so far. The only first party game that's been delayed is Yoshi, and every other one has hit its release window. However, tons of indie games have been delayed ever since the launch of the Switch. Whenever we've had a indie showcase where release dates get announced, most of those release windows are missed and the games are delayed. There are many reasons why games get delayed. In the case of when first party Nintendo games get delayed, it is usually just because they underestimate the time it would take to be ready. This could be from new ideas that came up, or maybe it wasn't polished enough, wasn't optimized well, or needed more content in some areas, and so on. It's hard to know exactly what causes these delays for first-party games, but when it comes to third-party and first-party games, there's more we know. The reason third-party games get delayed on Switch and come out after other platforms is because the game has been in development longer on other consoles, and the developers have had more experience optimizing for those other consoles. So basically, because the Switch is so new, they haven't had as much time to develop the game, and optimization issues come up. But the one main reason that indie games are delayed that also can apply to some third-party and first-party games is this. The last 10% of the work needed to be completed on a game takes 90% of the time. I'll say that again. The last 10% of the work that's needed to be completed on a game takes 90% of the development time. I originally learned this saying through Tim Ruswick, who is an indie dev who also has a YouTube channel for indie devs called Game Dev Underground. But this saying of the last 10% of the work taking 90% of the time is so true, and it's why so many games get delayed, especially indie games. The developers don't always realize how much more tedious stuff there is to do when you're so close to finishing a game. Now of course, this ratio may vary from person to person, from game studio to game studio, and even from game to game. But the point is, when the developers only have a small portion of their development work left, that last stretch takes way longer than expected. I have experienced this firsthand with my game Spikeblade that I am developing. If you don't know, I've been working on this game off and on as a side hobby since I was 13 years old. 6 years. I finished the main chunk of my game a few years ago, and I've been working on the last 10% of my game ever since. So many things pop up when you're so close to finishing. You may forget that you need more sound effects or more artwork, you need menu systems, a credit scene, etc. And then when you're working on those things, you realize you have to do this thing and that thing, and then those things take a super long time to do. And then when you're working on those things, a bunch of bugs and glitches will happen, and that'll break your game. And then you have to fix everything. Some people like me even deal with project files being corrupted, and then having to spend weeks and months recovering those game files. And then when your game is actually done, you may have to deal with optimization issues, and then you have to get it approved by Nintendo or the other platform you're developing for. And then they might deny it, and then you have to go back and fix things or change things and then resubmit your game. There are so many variables and things that come up when you're so close to finishing, and I believe any developer out there can attest to that. This factor of the last 10% of your game taking 90% of the time causes a lot of indie games to be delayed because the developers may not have been anticipating all those things to pop up, or they were, but they didn't realize it would be so time consuming. And so because of that, they scheduled the release date too early. This can also happen with third-party and first-party game studios, even though they're way more experienced and have way bigger teams. Sometimes they just don't quickly anticipate how long the last 10% of their work is actually going to take. An example of this would be Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Nintendo had never done a giant open world game like this before. They bit off a little more than they could chew with the timetable they set for themselves. They didn't anticipate all the problems and issues and variables that would arise when they were getting closer to finishing, because they'd never done something at this scale, and so it got delayed, and got delayed again so it could launch on the Switch. Making games definitely is time consuming, especially with a small team or developing by yourself. So many factors, variables, and issues arise when nearing the completion of a game. In other words, the last 10% of the work takes 90% of the time. I hope you found this interesting and informative. If you know of any other reasons a video game might get delayed, or if you have any examples you know of, be sure to let me know. So has one of your most anticipated games ever been delayed? Do you ever get mad when this happens? Does this 10% left, 90% time ratio make sense to you? Let me know your take in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching.